When you look at ancient sacred texts, have you ever thought that maybe the numbers aren't just numbers? That they could be a key to some deeper, hidden meaning? Well, today we're diving into a fascinating system that asks exactly that. So let's explore that question. Are there hidden numerical patterns in the Quran? We're going to do that by looking at a very specific framework. It's called Mathani symbolic numerology, and it's all about trying to find spiritual insights baked right into the numbers of the Quran.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the big idea, then look at the building blocks, and then get into the nuts and bolts of how it actually works. After that, we'll see what it creates, and this is really interesting, and we'll wrap up by talking about what it's for, and just as importantly, what it's not for.
All right, Section 1, Patterns in Sacred Texts. Let's get into the foundation of this whole idea. So, the theory behind all this is that the numbers you see in the Quran, they're not just there for counting verses or chapters. They're actually symbols. And this system sees them as representing these two huge concepts. On one hand, you have divine order and stability, and on the other, you have transformation and spiritual meaning. Okay, let's get into the building blocks of the system. So how does this actually work? Well, it all starts by taking the single-digit numbers, 1 through 9, and splitting them into two completely different groups or, well, families. So you've got these two families of numbers. First, you have what are called the muqatta'at numbers. These are the prime numbers 2, 3, 5, and 7. And they're seen as stable endpoints. The name actually comes from these mysterious, unjoined letters you find at the beginning of some chapters in the Quran. Nobody knows their exact meaning, so they symbolize something divinely constant. That's the idea here. Then, on the other side, you have the bukan muqatta'at numbers, 1, 4, 6, 8, and 9. These are the opposite. They're the transformative numbers, the ones that act as intermediaries and create change.
Now check this out, because this is where it gets really interesting. The whole theory claims that when you run all the numbers through its process, the results are perfectly balanced. I mean, exactly 50-50. Half of the outcomes land in that stable muqatta'at category, and the other half land in the transformative bukan muqatta'at category. That perfect balance is pointed to as evidence of a kind of divine design.
So you might be asking, how does it get that perfect 50-50 split? Well, let's pop the hood and take a look at the engine that drives this whole thing. The Mathani transformation cycle. Yeah, the Mathanized cycle. This is really the heart of this system. It's a 4-step process that's designed to take any single-digit number and transform it, revealing its symbolic connection to another number. And the name Mathani is perfect, really, because it means the often repeated, which is exactly what this process is, a repeating cycle.
And it's actually pretty straightforward. There are just 4 steps. You start with any single-digit number, let's call it n. Step 2, you add 10 to it. Simple enough. Step 3, you take that new number and you double it. And for the final step, you just sum the digits of that final number to get back to a single digit. And that final digit, that's its endpoint, its symbolic partner. And you can see here, even though the calculation itself seems simple, the work behind it is pretty deep. This isn't just a random formula. The people who developed this created these huge, complex data tables to map out all these connections and chart the journey of every single number through the cycle.
Let's walk through a quick example. Take the number 7. Remember, that's one of our stable muqatta'at numbers. Okay, so 10 plus 7 is 17. Then we double it, so 17 times 2 is 34. And the last step, we sum the digits. 3 plus 4 equals 7. See that? It cycles right back to itself. It reinforces its own identity as a stable, unchanging number. Pretty neat. But it's not always so straightforward. This is where the real dance between the two number families begins. If you take a stable number like 3 and run it through the cycle, it actually transforms into a transformative number, 8. And it goes the other way too. A transformative number like 6 ends up at 5, which is a stable one. So every single calculation shows this constant interplay, this shift between stability and transformation. All right, so now we know how the engine works. But what does it actually produce? What's the point of all this? Well, this is where we go from numbers to poetry, and where the system really starts to connect with the Quranic chapters. Okay, so this isn't just for single digits. For bigger numbers, like the number of verses in a Quranic chapter, the system has a slightly more complex 5-step cycle, but the goal is exactly the same. You take that big number, process it, and boil it all the way down to one single symbolic endpoint that's supposed to capture the core theme of that entire chapter. And the final result here isn't just another number. It's poetry. Seriously. For every single one of the 114 chapters of the Quran, the system generates what it calls a pentagon poem, a 5-line poem that's meant to be a reflection of that chapter's spiritual essence. Just look at this one for Surah Yusuf, the chapter of Joseph. So, how does the math lead to that poem? Well, Surah Yusuf has 111 verses. You take that number, 111, and the first step is to sum the digits. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. Then that 3 gets put through the transformation cycle, and it lands on a final symbolic endpoint of 1. In this system, 1 represents divine unity or tawhid. So the poem is written to reflect that very theme. It's this amazing bridge from a verse count to a number to a core spiritual idea. Now, whenever you talk about a system that claims to find hidden meanings, you have to ask a really important question. What is this for? And maybe even more critically, what is it not for? This brings us to the system's ethical boundaries. And the people behind this framework are incredibly clear on this point. This is a tool for one thing and one thing only, tadabbur. That means deep, personal reflection on the text to try and strengthen your own faith. What it is absolutely not for is predicting the future, the gaib, or the unseen. Using it for any kind of fortune-telling is strictly forbidden and considered shirk, a form of polytheism. And this isn't just their opinion. It lines up with teachings from major Islamic scholars. As Sheikh Ibn Usaymin is quoted in the framework, these patterns are signs for those who think, not toys for fortune-tellers. And that single distinction, using it for reflection, not for prediction, is everything. It's the ethical core of this entire idea. So what about other systems that try to do similar things? I'm talking about things like the controversial Code 19 theory. Well, the Mathani framework actually addresses this head-on to make its own purpose crystal clear. You see, Code 19 has a complicated history. Its fans see it as this incredible mathematical miracle that proves the Quran's divinity. But its critics, people like Bilal Phillips, they point to what they call selective counting and basically fudging the numbers. But the biggest issue, the real bombshell, is that the founder of the theory ended up rejecting 2 verses of the Quran, specifically 9:128 and 12:99, because they didn't fit his mathematical pattern. And that, for many, crossed a serious line into heresy. So by bringing up the whole Code 19 controversy, the Masani framework is drawing a line in the sand. It's positioning itself as something very different, a tool for faith and reflection that works with the entire accepted text of the Quran, not one that changes the text to fit the math. It's trying to stay firmly in the lane of contemplation and avoid those deep, dangerous theological waters. Which really leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Is something like this a divinely embedded code, intentionally placed there for us to reflect on? Or is it a really profound example of our own human minds, our amazing ability to seek and find patterns in the world around us? Either way, it's a fascinating lens to look through.